Strange, but true stories. Tales from the light side, the dark side, and the other side. I'm Steve White. Well, multiple bags of Halloween candy down, and many more to go. And October is only halfway through. So today, we focus more on the dark side of things, and I'm not talking about dark chocolate. Instead, we're talking about dark entities. It's been a topic we've focused on a lot here, as people have shared their stories with us over the years. These entities seem to come in many forms, and they have the ability to attach to people who come into contact with them. Today, we have two stories to share, sent to us by viewers and subscribers to the channel just like you. If you have a story that you'd like to share with us, there's information at the end of today's episode or in the show description about how to do so. This happened back in 2017. My aunt and uncle were dealing with some weird things happening inside their house, and my aunt wanted some help in finding out what was causing this stuff to go on. You may be inclined to ask, what kind of stuff was going on at the house? And I would ask you, what isn't she experiencing? But the main thing that she said was happening was what she referred to as a massive black mass that would rush at them at night in a very aggressive way. They would also have kitchen cabinets opening on their own. They had a pet bird, and the bird was attacked while in its cage by an entity that they could not see. They had been pushed and scratched by something. They had drastic mood changes, and they always seemed to be fighting with each other for some reason. But they continued to live at the house. So my mom and I went over one evening to see if we could help or maybe point to some answers. My aunt and uncle weren't there when we arrived. That was a bit strange, too. I had spoken with one of my cousins about 40 minutes prior, letting them know that we were coming over. A little background. I'm an Army reservist and a decently built guy. I'm also not easily frightened. But what happened that night at my aunt's house still has me shaking and afraid to this day. My mom is deaf, but she has a cochlear implant designed to help her hear. But when we pulled into my aunt's driveway, unbeknownst to me, she pulled out the earpiece, and that's very strange. It's something she never does. She's virtually deaf without it. My mom and I began to walk up to the house, and I could hear the dogs in the backyard barking and growling. I had decided to come armed, partly because there had been a report of a wild pig and also a panther spotted in this area a short while before, but also just because. So I had my Glock 23 on me. I was approaching the front door when I heard a deep voice say, "Leave." It sounded respectful. I thought maybe it was my mom talking, so I turned to her to see if she had said anything. It didn't appear that she had been the one who had said anything, and instead she was resting her hand on the house. Why, I'm still not sure. She then started around the corner of the house, and then I heard the voice again, but this time it was a lot more stern.
"Leave. Now."
Definitely more aggression this time. I don't know why, but I'm still convinced that it was my mom talking. I turned around, I followed her back to the front of the house, and I was looking right at her when I heard it again, though this time it was very threatening.
"Leave now or die."
At this point, I realized that it wasn't my mom saying these words, and I also realized that she had removed the earpiece from her cochlear implant. I got her attention and moved her toward the car. We got in and we took off. It took a long time that night for me to calm down and drift off to sleep. There were lots of thoughts running through my head about what we'd experienced at my aunt and uncle's house. Now, I hadn't been asleep for very long when I woke up to an incredibly frightening sight, and one that's been burned into my brain. I saw what appeared to be a person in my room just inside my door. It wasn't a big person, estimating about 5'7", 5'8". There was enough ambient light for me to see some features, and it was just staring at me. And it was smiling. Now, this wasn't a nice, how you doing smile. This was more like a Joker smile. I got a menacing feeling from it for sure. My military training kicked in and I yelled, "Who are you?" My Glock was just a few feet away and I reached for it, and suddenly, whatever this was, vanished. I couldn't believe my eyes. I went into tactical mode and I cleared my house, going room to room, only to find everyone in bed asleep. It couldn't have been my dad. He can't really walk very well because of strokes he's had in the past. My mom was in a deep sleep, and I'm such a light sleeper that I would have heard her get up in the first place. I went from being mad to scared. Did I just see what I think I just saw? I went back to my room and I sat on my bed with the lights on. It couldn't have been a nightmare. This was real. In the morning, I called my aunt, and I talked to her about the night before and what I had experienced, and she had said that they'd actually had a decent night, and they weren't disturbed again by whatever was causing the problems in their house until early in the morning, and then things went crazy again. I put a couple of things together from that conversation. When nothing odd was happening at their house is when the figure was in my room. There's a family friend that feels that I was targeted by a demonic entity, and if I went back to the house, that I would become its next target because it followed me home for a brief visit. So, I have not been back to my aunt's house since that happened, and the last I heard, they were still having problems. This story was sent to us by a young lady in her 30s just recently. I've watched and listened to and enjoyed your channel for a long while now, mainly because there is much that I can relate to here. And I know I'm not alone when I hear the stories of others. Your channel is a bit of a safe haven for me, as my life up until about 3 years ago had been plagued by all sorts of paranormal type things. Let's see. There have been entities, strange creatures, psychic-related things that sound bizarre and insane. My third eye was wide open at one point, and it was so overwhelming that I had a friend of a friend in a completely different country shut it off, as I called it. And as absolutely crazy as my supernatural encounters have been, I miss them. It feels like being blind without my third eye. I wish I'd only learned to control the input I received rather than wish it away. I've got so many stories to tell based on my experiences, and I wanted to share one of my own for some time now, in hopes of someone here maybe having an idea of what I saw that night. I've shared it with some folks, and I've searched for answers to no avail. Unfortunately, many of the otherworldly things that I've been through have been sad or dark in nature. And this one night in particular has haunted me since it happened. I've never been able to truly answer the whys or even make sense of how the heck my ex and I even survived that night or what we even saw. So this was back when I was 21 years of age. I lived in the city of Brampton, Ontario in eastern Canada. It's part of the Greater Toronto area. At the time, I lived with my now ex-fiancé. We'll call him Scott for this retelling. He was an abusive guy, and after years of dealing with it, I finally got the courage to leave. He threw my belongings outside in the snow and put his hands on me for the last time. So I walked with my bags and my bare feet through the snow to the closest bus stop and never looked back. But during my time with Scott, my interactions with all sorts of strange things seemed to go off the charts. Those years were full of the most paranormal activity I've ever experienced. It was as if he, had a demon or something evil attached to him and it was following us, or rather him. On this one particular night, he seemed to be in a good mood, which made his attitude mostly pleasant for the day. His idea of fun was for us to take our laptops to a local coffee shop or two and spend hours soaking up their free Wi-Fi. He would use my paychecks to buy whatever he chose off of various online shopping sites. His favorite was eBay. So we're sitting quietly, browsing on our own devices at this coffee shop, when he turned his screen to face me, and he showed me a shirt that he'd found online and wanted to buy. When I saw it, I immediately got goosebumps. It was a listing on eBay for a black t-shirt that had an image on the front and writing on the back. The first weird thing I noticed was that there was no information about anything on this page. Nothing about how to order it, no size choices, no seller info, no descriptions, nothing. Just two pictures, the front and back of the shirt. I thought that was pretty strange. And when I looked closer at the image of the shirt, I saw what appeared to be two half-decayed, zombie-looking hellhounds standing side by side, looking aggressively at me. They were surrounded by an orange light, like a border, like there was a light shining from behind them and all around them. I'm an artist, and I love creepy and gross work, but something about this image seemed evil. Like, seriously evil. On the back of the shirt, in orange writing, it read, "Death will come quickly." That image creeped me out, and I could sense that Scott got pleasure out of my discomfort. He turned his laptop back around, chuckling. He agreed it was weird that it didn't have any information either. But little did we know that shirt was definitely telling us something was coming. The coffee shop we were hanging in closed up for the night, and we were just kind of hanging out at the curb outside, finishing our blended drinks. When 3 a.m. started rolling around, I did a sort of surroundings check, giving my immediate environment a quick scan. And I noticed something really strange. "Where is everyone?" I asked quietly aloud to Scott. He looked around for a couple of seconds, only to brush it off as being, really late at night, early in the morning. Now, if you don't know about Brampton, it's a typical busy city. It quiets down here and there in the early a.m., but it doesn't slow completely. It doesn't shut down, depending on where you stay, of course. We got to our feet to start our long walk back to our apartment. There were no cars on the streets, no pedestrians on the sidewalk, anywhere. I've heard it described on this channel many times like that silence in the woods when there's a large predator around. I had that type of vibe. Only in the city, there are typically folks traveling to and from work. I knew this because I would leave occasionally for work at this hour on a workday, and I always saw traffic and cyclists and pedestrians out running or walking. The whole way back, we did not come across a soul. The silence seemed heavy, but our footsteps seemed to echo down the street while we walked. It made me cringe the whole way, but we kept up the pleasant small talk from earlier to pass the time. We finally reached our neighborhood around 4 a.m. or so, and to get to our place, it was kind of a twisting, bending path through all the small streets. The road we were on was basically a hill lined with houses stacked right next to one another. At the bottom of our hill, the road curved and continued down and to the right. There was a catwalk, or throughway if you prefer, just after the light right before the curve. Our place wasn't more than 50 feet from the light. By this point, Scott and I were cutting up laughing again, and we seemed to have been able to shake the weird vibes from earlier. I got the keys for the apartment out of my pocket just as we were about to walk up onto our driveway, and I had the key primed and ready for the door. We had just reached the end of the driveway when suddenly, two big, dog-like animals ran out from where the catwalk was at the bottom of the hill, and we froze. The creatures lurked into the orange glow of the streetlight, and I got a pretty good look at them, and my mind immediately flashed back to that frickin' shirt we'd seen earlier. What in God's name, I thought. No way! My stomach sank, and I started sweating. It all happened in what must have been like 3 minutes or less, but it felt like forever. These dogs were huge. huge and grotesque, like an experiment gone bad in some crazy scientist laboratory, huge and grotesque. I feel nauseous and fresh fear coming back even as I'm writing this. They had patchy, light-colored fur, brownish gray, dark, almost shiny skin, but it appeared almost like they'd lost a fight and their wounds had festered and started to rot. They both had their gazes fixed on us, and I heard Scott quietly say to me, "What are they?" We didn't take our eyes off of them either. I whispered back, "Dogs, maybe? From a neighbor's house?" He then started to move slowly towards the apartment. I quickly said in a firm yet quiet voice, "No, don't run. I've got the keys." He kept walking slowly away. I looked back down the hill, 50 feet away. These two animals took his actions just how I'd feared, and they started to charge us. I shoved him behind so hard and yelled, "Run!" And we bolted for the door. I slid that key in so fast, shoved the door open, pulled Scott in behind me. I slammed the door shut so hard I'm actually amazed that our two upstairs and downstairs neighbors heard nothing. We stood there panting in the dark apartment. Neither of us made any attempt to turn on a light. We were so out of breath. Everything was silent except for our breathing. After a few minutes, we started a whispered conversation. "Do you think they're gone?" he asked me. "I don't know. I'll check," I said. By now, our eyes had adjusted to the dark, so I was able to make my way slowly to the large window that we had that overlooked the backyard. Scott wasn't much of a decorator, so sheets always covered any windows we had wherever we stayed. I snuck over to the window as quietly as possible, trying to avoid the squeaky parts of the floor that the landlord never wanted to fix, failing miserably to do so. The squeaks alone should have woken somebody. My heart was absolutely pounding as I reached the window. I was trying to be brave, but I could have easily broken down into tears. I was so scared. I pulled the sheet back a bit, and there in the backyard stood the two half-rotten beasts that had chased us, and they were staring right back at me. I put the sheet back in place. I now didn't care about my noise as much, and I quickly tiptoed back to where Scott was standing, and I whispered to him in confirmation that we were not alone. We didn't sleep a wink the rest of the night. Instead, we sat up in the dark, whispering about the possibility of what the hell those things were, questioning each other to make sure we'd both seen the same things. I remembered that I had an appointment at 8:30 that morning to renew my health card, and I could not miss it. And at the time, I traveled everywhere on bicycle. Great. Well, we sat there talking, waiting for morning to come. The creepy vibes never changed. Around 7, I got myself ready to go, and slower than I ever have, I creaked open the front door, peeking out with one eyeball to see if the noise would attract anything. Where my brains were at that moment, I have no clue, but I was exhausted. But fortunately, nothing. Okay, I thought that's a good sign. Mind you, I'm still terrified. I crept back over to the window to peek outside. Probably should have done that first. Nothing. Good. I took a steak knife with me as a meager defense, and slowly I exited my apartment. I kept my bike chained up out back, and the path to get back and forth was significantly narrowed when you had a bike in tow. So if I was going to get ambushed, I thought it's probably going to be before I even leave the property. My heart was pounding in my ears, and I could smell my own stress sweat as I very slowly made my way to the backyard, all the while trying not to make any sound when I could help it. I poked my head around the corner. Nothing. Whew. I sighed relief, still frozen in place though. Finally, I snapped back to myself again and unlocked that bike so fast I picked it up above my head, jogged to the street, I hopped on, I raced uphill as swiftly as my legs could propel me and out to the main road. I just pedaled until I was numb all over, and all I could hear was wind rushing by, my heartbeat in my ears. I made it to and from my appointment with no issues. Though the morning was foggy, I made an effort to avoid my neighborhood for hours. I didn't see those creatures again, and thankfully I haven't since. But the final strange part of my story, that ad on eBay, was gone the next day. Even the bookmarked page said that the item had been removed. I asked others around if they had seen anything after this incident. Maybe something was on the news. Nothing. People chalked it up as us having been elaborately pranked. I tried believing that myself for a while, but I just can't. This has been another strange but true stories. So it's comment time. Let us know what you think in the comments below. And to let you know, your comments have weight. We hear from folks all the time after an episode drops that they feel less alone in the world because of the support given here in the comments. So keep it up, you cool people. If you have a take on what's going on in these stories, you're welcome to share your observations or personal experiences. The positive support is appreciated by all. If you have a story that you'd like to share with us, we'd love to read it. Send your full story in an email to strangebutTrueStories2@gmail.com. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and sign up for notifications so you know when the next episode drops to the channel. Thanks to all those who have. And thanks for watching this video. I'm Steve White. Until next time.